One.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today is a very special Thursday Collective episode. We've got quite a collection of people here. We're each basically going to be bringing our own little topics, and maybe you guys can suggest another topic in the super chat or in the chat room. So, get on and get involved. Leave a like on the video, and let's jump right into this. We've all come prepared. First off, we've got a guy. You've seen him co-host here. You've seen him tweet out. And catch this, he's an actor in showbiz. It's Mark Pellegrino.
What's up?
And then we've got a guy who, he directed or produced or wrote The Little Rascals. That to me is all you really need to do to be a friend of mine. You'd think he'd get made fun of because of his name growing up, but when your name is already gay, I don't know how they can manipulate your name to poke fun at you. Please welcome Paul Gay.
Thank you. They had a lot of fun with Paul, however. In Latin, Paul means small.
Oh, no. And here is a guy who's not very small at all. He frankly looks like me, and I can stare at him all day. It's finance person, Seth Levine.
Hey, thanks a lot. Great to be here.
And last but not least, they say, they talk about the thorn on the rose, or the thorn in a bed of roses. This is a rose among thorns. It's Jacqueline Schumann.
Hey, how's it going? I was wondering what you were going to do with that, Rucka.
So was I. And in the chat, we've got a super chat from Jonathan Honig with $4.99, starting us off strong. All right. I guess who should go first is the real question. Should we leave it to the lottery, or kind of an improv game where everyone's silent and then someone jumps in?
I don't know, why not ladies first?
I think
chivalrous.
the oldest. I think the oldest should go first.
All right, Jax, you're up.
Oh, you bitches.
You got balls.
Hey, Seth threw you under the bus, Jax.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I am going to talk about, because I'm like 80, and I've been around through several elections. I want to talk about election security because we had an interesting conversation. I wasn't part of it. There was an interesting conversation last week on Brazil and the elections. And I've actually done quite a bit of research. I've written articles about election security. I've interviewed election officials about their specific elections. In fact, I had an interview with the head of election security for Chicago elections. And because Chicago is notorious for having corrupt elections back in the 60s.
That's a myth. I just want to say.
There's rumors to it, right? I don't know, the moon landing, I don't know if that's a myth either, but there is a misconception about elections, at least here in the United States. I think that there is a certain amount of election fraud that does happen with mail-in votes, with going to polls twice. But as this election official told me when I asked him about, well, don't you have problems with people, going to one poll and then going to another poll? And his response was, we have a hard enough time just getting people to come out and vote once, let alone twice, which rings a bit resonant and true for me. But there are security practices, election security, crypto security practices that have been put in place, especially over the last 20 years, that make it very, very difficult to actually defraud an election. At least everybody remember in the Trump era, everybody was talking about, the election machines, the Dominion machines. I was the stupid idiot who watched all those hours and hours and hours of election pollsters and election workers who were being interviewed in all the different states, and none of the evidence that they presented was even remotely credible. It was all hearsay. One of the things I want to talk about with these machines, how many of you gentlemen voted in this last election? Okay, and how did you do it? Did you mail in or did you personally go in?
Mail in.
Personally.
Personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personally,
So
yeah.
Mark and Seth, personally, you went personally. What was your experience? Did you use the voting machines, or did you write your ballot out, hand write it out?
I wrote my ballot out and then delivered it to the person who put it in the box. Made sure all my I's were dotted and T's were crossed, then put it in the box.
Okay. And what about you, Seth?
Yeah, so in New York, it's like a bubble, Scantron for those of us old enough to remember doing those in school. You just kind of fill out the bubble and then you slide it into like an optical reader.
Yeah. So that's actually the exact same process that happens even if you were to fill out your ballot electronically, which I do. So I fill out you get like this little, it looks like a little credit card, you stick it in, and it's basically a giant iPad, and you touch all of your preferences. When you're done, that prints out an actual ballot that you can look at and look at all of your options. And at the end of the day, that ballot is exactly the same as a handwritten ballot. There's no way that can be changed into, digitally converted into something. I know that they were talking with the Dominion machines that, they changed the ballots. Well, this is what these new machines do, is they take your ballot that Mark and Seth handwrite, and they take my ballot that I digitally input and print out and view, and they scan those into these massive machines, and they keep those ballots in. So let's say that Mark's not a very good bubble filler inner, and it looks really weird. And they can't figure out which way he votes. They actually take those and scan them all in, and if something doesn't work right there and then, if Mark is still there, they'll rerun it and they'll check for, it's called adjudication. So any ballot that doesn't make sense, because now these machines have the actual bandwidth to keep a scanned image, like a faxed image, of those ballots. Before, machines they wouldn't actually scan the image, they would just, tally the vote. And so it was a lot easier to defraud an election, but not in the last 12 years, these machines are extremely reliable. And not only that, but the poll books that you sign in at, when you go to when you go to the election site, you sign in on a poll book. If you signed in, say, at another place, those poll books are actually connected via secure Wi-Fi to a secured system that runs and checks to make sure that you haven't signed in anywhere else. And let's say you were sneaky and you signed in on one and then you ran over to another place and signed in on another one. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if there were 2 Mark Pellegrinos that showed up, one of them gets, actually what they do is they call Mark Pellegrino, or they email him and they say, you showed up twice, what was your actual vote, or come down and vote again. So there's this whole process that goes on, and it's very secure in the United States. The Dominion machines are very secure. I remember when I don't even know his name, but I call him my pillow guy. You know that guy?
Michael Lindell.
Yeah, that you see on Fox News at 2:00 in the morning. And he was like, oh, we've got a Dominion machine, we're going to break it apart. They never did. They just, I was like watching, oh, show me how it's broken. And they're like, okay, this is a simulation of a machine. They can't even get their hands on one of these machines because they're so secure. But in other countries, if they're using these machines in other countries, it's going to be fairly secure. But if they're using other methods of vote counting, which I think they did in Brazil, which they did in Venezuela, which they also did in Belarus. So the interesting story in Belarus is we all think if we looked up Viktor Lukashenko right now, and as the president of Belarus, the only president of Belarus after the Soviet Union broke up, it will show that he was elected in a democratic election. But really what happened, as I hear it, and it's kind of a plausible story to me, because poll sites in Belarus are generally held at schools. Here we have them kind of at like retirement facilities or, any other kind of, public facility that can be temporarily farmed out for elections. Generally in Belarus, they were at schools. And the story is that one of the school teachers who was responsible for running the polls, running the elections, all the votes were taken just as the polls closed and they were counting up the ballots. Men in suits came in that were effectively KGB and said, "Okay, we'll take these ballots now. Thank you. Bye-bye." And then they counted the votes. So that's how you can, that's an example of a corrupt nation, how they can how they can fake their elections. But we never had any stories like that here. None of those stories. What I love about our system is that I still trust the legal system. I don't trust politicians anymore, but I still trust the legal system, and I trust standards of evidence. And that's, so I wanted to talk about that. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that that I'm telling the truth, or just talking out my butt, or what? I am an old lady, by the way.
It seems to me like the Trump people are pulling a Johnny Cochran, and they're just taking advantage of the fact that people are a little bit ignorant with respect to this new technology, and they're going to play that on that ignorance as much as possible and exploit it, right? As they did with the DNA evidence that is now irrefutable evidence in a court of law. They cast suspicion on it to get one guy off. They're trying to do the same thing with Trump. Technology is going to fix the corruption in our elections. I think it seems right to me. What do you think, Paul?
I'm not well enough informed to have an opinion. My problem is that I hear anecdotal things. I hear about, first of all, I have no idea if the election was stolen, and if it was stolen, it's certainly not the first election that was stolen. My guess is it wasn't stolen, but I don't know enough to have an opinion. I hear about anecdotal stories about observers not being allowed to be close enough to actually observe counting. Again, that's anecdotal, and I know that apparently no judge has accepted anything that's been presented to them as evidence by the Republicans or whatever, which is, that's a very interesting point. That's an interesting point. To me, this is the fact that the nation or the counties or the city governments or state governments don't have the will to work together to find out a way that is not falsifiable, so that everybody would know that it's, whether they accept the result, whether they like the result or don't like it, that it was fair. This seems an easy problem to solve. I don't understand why people are allowed to vote so much after the election, after election day. It seems weird to me that we don't have an election day that is a snapshot where you pretty much vote on that day, or at least have your vote postmarked on that day. But when I'm hearing that votes are being counted 2 weeks, a month after the election, I'm going, what the hell are these people doing? It's impossible with the trillions of dollars that we're giving them that they can't find enough people to count votes. And they can't have independent people looking over the votes or opponents looking over the votes, so that everybody goes, yeah, that's not the outcome I wanted, but that is clearly the right outcome. So I think if there were a will, we would no longer question whether the elections were fair or not. I think it's pretty easy to do, but there isn't the will to do that.
I think the allegation that the election was first going to be stolen, then that it was being stolen, and then that it had been stolen was always arbitrary and capricious. And when Trump had the nation's attention, he was able to get a bunch of people super excited and to believe it just simply because he said it. And after that point, a lot of people are just simply not interested in what the evidence says. So you can tell them about how the courts looked at the evidence, and many courts, including Trump appointed judges, et cetera, they looked at the evidence, and fortunately, judges in courts, they don't have the same methodology or lack of methodology as the United States of Twitter, which just sees an image, sees a video clip of somebody throwing a piece of paper in the trash, and immediately assumes that's a Democrat throwing a Republican vote in the trash. So you cannot, there is no such thing as satisfying everybody. Once people have become capricious, once people have made up their mind, there's just no way to have a system that satisfies everybody. I mean, yeah, they pulled a Johnny Cochran. They also kind of pulled a Jesse Cochran. That was the original name of Uncle Jesse on Full House before it was changed to Katsopoulos in later seasons.
Hey, well, you got to admit, Paul's right. I mean, the extension of elections 2 weeks before, a month afterwards, where they're still counting, it does add grist for the mill to this corruption.
Yeah, agreed.
Whether it's a conspiracy theory or not, it does cast aspersions on whether or not these elections are honest. You should have an election day. You should have an election day. If you can't get to the polls by election day, you probably shouldn't be voting. If you can't vote at the time that's designated for you, or should you really be voting? I mean, come on, man, get it done.
Yeah,
there's a lot probably wrong. There's probably a lot wrong with the voting process, and there's a lot that could be changed about it. But when the allegation of fraud or of a straight up stolen election is so capricious, I see no reason to take it seriously. It's like Hitchens said, I think, and he sort of sounds like Rand with her epistemology, like something that's proposed arbitrarily can be dismissed the same way, something like that.
I'll give you guys one thing to take away and look up beyond this. It's called Text to Vote, TEXT, the number 2, VOTE.com. And these guys actually ran me through a demo of, and their system's already being used in Colorado for local elections. The GOP actually likes it because it's tied to your driver's license as well, or your ID, as well as your cell phone carrier. And it's highly secure, and it's, it would be so easy to text your vote in and secured, actually, that it solves all these problems of mail-in ballots and voting 2 weeks after and before and long lines at the polls. And the only reason why it hasn't been implemented yet is because the big carriers have not yet gotten on board with it.
Yeah, but I got to tell you something. I'm sort of sorry, Seth. You go. You've been trying to get a word in.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's so good. Yeah, no, this all strikes me as a problem of like system design as opposed to like technology. Like, I don't think there's a technology that exists that, if you're, as Rucka said, of the mindset of like a conspiracy theorist in this venue or in larger ones, that there's ever going to be a technology that's going to satisfy you, right? If like you are prone to saying, oh, that election was stolen, I don't think it's going to matter if it's hand ballots or if it's text to vote, right? It's a matter of sort of how do you view the integrity of the system that you're sort of that you're analyzing. And if you look at all these voting, the political systems of all these countries that we're mentioning, called the US and Belarus, for example, like people are, the culture has real corruption concerns surrounding the politics of those countries. I mean, every country, right, just at different degrees. And, I think that's really the heart of it, because there's no reason why you couldn't have an honest voting system with like, voting with straws or something, right? Or marbles, right? Like, so it's really about kind of how people view kind of how the voting system is I think constructed, and the trust that they have in the political system. That really is kind of the crux of this issue, because it seems like there's always going to be a reason to not trust something, right? You brought up, taking apart the voting machines, right, that are super secure. Like, with the text to vote, there'll be claims of Verizon and AT&T, sort of not getting votes in, or who knows like what there's going to be, right? So even it just doesn't strike me as like a technology solution.
I'm also for making the process of voting more conscious, instead of something that you just do sort of as an afterthought, and going to the polls and voting, or sitting down with a ballot in your home and going through the proposals and the ballot proposals and actually checking them off before you mail it in. That requires some consciousness. Sitting there on your phone doesn't necessarily do that. But I'm one who doesn't think that, being born in a place automatically should confer citizenship anyway. So I don't mind the obstacles to voting, because I think if you're more in passion, you're going to go to the place to vote, right? You're going to be motivated to participate. And less so if you can just do it on your phone as an afterthought. So despite the security, give me the obstacle.
Yeah, and I think those are sort of I think those obstacles favor the entrenched, political players, of the entrenched political players, right? The information almost works, the information void kind of works in their favor, right? Like I have a hard time finding out like what these policy, what politicians stand for what. Basically, I think the parties would prefer you just go in and vote red, blue. And this way that gives them a little bit of an edge, I think, in that then they could sort of gamify sort of who's coming to which team, as opposed to actually having to deal with the nuances of ideas.
I'd prefer that it not matter who wins the election, because I'd prefer that they have so little power over us that it doesn't matter. I'm blue skying it, obviously, but I would love to have philosophical agreement over what it is that government can and should do. And then the only question in terms of votes is what approach do you want to take to accomplish that, as opposed to what should we be accomplishing? And I'm not saying that,
right. It's like, who cares if there's fraud, right? Like,
which candidate is most qualified to carry this out, rather than which, lobbyists are going to get
right. Or whose specific approach. I mean, as long as we agree on the goal and that we're not going to violate individual rights in achieving the goal, then it becomes an interesting question of strategy and tactics and effectiveness. And I'd love to have that vote. But, you should be able to wake up the day after election day, or in our case, 2 months after election day, and not give a shit who won. It really should not matter. Not because the issues don't matter, but because we should be agreeing upon the delimited nature of a constitutional republic. And we should not be trying to do anything that's outside that. The notion that senators and congressmen don't specifically have to swear on their mother's bodies that the laws that they're passing do not violate my objectivist ethics and or the Constitution before they pass them is laughable to me. These people should be bitch slapped every time they overstep their bounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See that.
Paul Gay for president. Paul Gay for president.
Text to bitch slap.
I would vote for that.
President Gay president. We got Marilyn with $3. Thank you for that. Jonathan with $4.99 says more Seth Levine. Walter with €2, and then Marilyn with $2 says Washington State is only mail-in, no other choice. I wonder, was that a COVID thing, or is that always? Apollo with £5 says question. Okay, and it says we're each bringing in our own topic, so this could sidetrack us. But he asks, question for Paul: how do you formulate wrestling storylines?
I look at my life and I make it less plausible, which is difficult because my life itself is implausible. No, storylines. So I know you guys are all pro wrestling fans, because every student of objectivism is a pro wrestling fan. So storylines in the old days used to be good guys versus bad guys. And when you were booking the matches or writing it, you would have your good guy character. Why do we love this character? You'd have your bad guy character. Why do we hate him? What is the personal ingredient that makes us care about their conflict? So in a sense, it's like writing a movie or a play or a short story, where you've got a protagonist, you've got an antagonist, you've got a goal, which is to win a title or win the match or whatever. And what you're doing as a wrestling writer is to get the audience emotionally involved in the outcome of something that they know is predetermined, which is exactly what you're doing as a film writer, as a playwright, or whatever. You want to make people care about something, even though they shouldn't care because it's fake. That's the F word in pro wrestling. It's fake. They know that, but how do you make them care within those limits? So it's an art form, it's a craft or whatever. I think most of entertainment and a lot of art is make people care.
Jonathan,
and you give them an arc, right? You give your characters an arc.
Arcs are great. Sometimes characters will change from good guy to bad guy, and you want to make that plausible, or bad guy to good guy. They'll have feuds. You want to make it make sense so that you can create the willing suspension of disbelief in your audience and make them feel good about cheering and booing. Although you'll be interested to know that cheering and booing is not allowed in Japan right now because of the COVID evil. But if you sell out your arena halfway, you're allowed to cheer and boo. But if you sell it out 75% or more, they will time the cheers and boos. So if a wrestler has an entrance song, you can sing along with them about 10 seconds, but you cannot hit the chorus, because if you hit the chorus, you've broken their laws and they will throw you out, because that's the scientific way that the COVID virus works. The COVID virus, when they hear the words of the chorus, will jump into the mouth of the person sitting next to you, but they will not do that at second 9.
I believe that. It's totally plausible.
Hey, wait a minute. I've been in the audience during a wrestling match at the Olympic Auditorium, and there wasn't a single person around me who thought it was fake. I have to say.
That's good. That's a
You're
that's a
doing
fun
great.
audience. That's a great audience if they believe it. That's perfect.
It's no coincidence the word mark means a wrestling fan that thinks it's real.
There you go. Wow.
That's a thing,
In
right?
Latin.
Damn.
That's absolutely
God,
true.
what did I do to deserve that, Rucka?
It's I didn't invent this language. White straight men did. Jonathan with 99 cents. Thank you for that. Jonathan then with 4.99 says, amazing. Rucka integrating the arbitrary with Jesse from Full House. That's nice. Then Justin with 1.99 says, please review Last of Us for TV talk.
Oh yeah, I just saw the first episode.
Is that the HBO Max dystopian?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Based on the awesome video game. I have a lot to say about it, I think. So we should talk.
We have many TV talks that we have to get through. But we'll put it on the list.
Yes, please do. And that wraps up the Jax segment. Who wants to go next?
Sorry, monopolized.
That was like a whole segment in and of itself.
I know.
Hey, I'll go next because
Blame
mine is
Paul, he nominated me.
Hey, mine is only going to take 10 seconds and will inspire absolutely no conversation whatsoever. So let me do this. I just heard from the New York Times, and so we know it's true, that Alec Baldwin will be charged with involuntary manslaughter in the Rust killing. I have to say that is good. Let me just talk a little bit about gun handling on the set. The responsibility doesn't end with the armor or the prop person. It ends with the actor who is handling the gun and has to point it at, in this case, the cinematographer and the director. You have to clear that firearm too. And now we only use airsoft guns now. I mean, since all this stuff has happened, they're only allowing airsoft guns on set, which means they fire BBs or air. There's no such thing as a bullet that goes in them, but they look real. And even with those, I clear it and show the cinematographer, the director, anybody who I'm pointing that gun at, I show that firearm to when I'm pointing it at them. Baldwin should have done that. At the very least, you should have unlocked that cylinder, let it hang out, taken those bullets out, showed them all that the cylinder was empty before he pulled the trigger. So
I thought the issue was he's shooting blanks.
No, look, dummy bullets that look like real bullets have to be cleared as well. The firing pin is either depressed or you shake it like this and it sounds like a bunch of BBs in there. That means it's a dummy bullet and nothing is going to happen if that hammer falls. You as the actor are partially responsible for that. You can't just rely or the chain of command and responsibility of that firearm does not end with the prop person who's handing you the gun. It ends with you clearing the weapon for yourself with your own eyes and anybody who that weapon is going to be pointed at, and to actually not necessarily point it directly at anybody, or not have your finger on the trigger, or to not pull back the hammer when you're pointing it at people during these practice shots. Paul, you look like you're moving around like you have an issue with what I'm saying.
No, my butt's uncomfortable, Mark. I was in an incredibly low budget film once that was being made by a couple of friends of mine. It was called Playhouse 2. And I said, why is it called Playhouse 2? There's no Playhouse. And they said, because sequels are better than originals. I thought, well, that's an approach. So I'm playing a psychotic deranged killer, which is a real stretch for me. And my character's in a wheelchair. And apparently I'm going to be pointing a gun at somebody. So in this film, which I think took 2 days to shoot or whatever, which had a budget of $11.03, most of which went to catering, that when they brought the gun on the set, they basically said, gun on set. And everybody kind of stiffened up. And then the gun person came, showed us the gun, opened it up, showed us that it was empty, asked us if we had any questions, if we were comfortable doing it. This, again, an $11 movie. And I've never shot a gun. I don't think that I can recall. And Alec Baldwin has been in 8 billion movies in which he shoots guns. So theoretically, he would know the proper procedure. It sounds like there was a series of systemic fuck ups, but it sounds like he was one of the fuck ups, is my understanding of how this works. But if in an $11 feature, you can have somebody show you the gun and show you that it's empty and everything, I think you could probably figure out a way to do that on a multi-million-dollar film or whatever he was making.
Yeah, I think armor, prop person, Baldwin, all responsible. They should get some penalty for this.
it seems like it should be, yeah, it's just from what you're saying, Mark, seems like it's a series of people who should be maybe charged too, not just.
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure they are going to be charged. If Baldwin's going to be charged, I'm sure the rest of them are. He may be the only one to get off.
Yeah, never aim a gun at anything you wouldn't want to shoot. That's what I was told. Marilyn with $10. Thank you for that. Okay, does that wrap up the Mark segment?
Why not?
That's a good segment. I will just contribute and say, I don't think Keanu Reeves would have made the same mistake.
Well,
No.
he's perfect. So how could he make a mistake?
Plus he can dodge bullets, so that's his superpower.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a complete, yeah. I mean, I have a couple of questions. I'm a complete outsider to the film industry, despite the last name, perhaps,
Nice.
but and the and the conspiracies, but like how common, you know, I'm just be like kind of curious, and I guess Mark, you touched upon that, but like how common, like how big of a mistake was this? I mean, I imagine there are a lot of guns on sets. Like how like what is, like, is there a best practices that everyone does? I guess
Yes.
Paul also kind of hit upon that too. And like how could a live round get in a prop gun? And and why are you actually aiming it at someone? Like, I would imagine from the camera perspective, like, I mean, like, it's almost impressive that, and this is, you know, morbid, but it's almost impressive that someone died. Like, I wouldn't necessarily aim a gun, even on set, like try to actually, you know, shoot someone like I was trying to kill him.
It's impressive because you have to be stupid on multiple levels for a mess up like this to happen. So yes, it is it's a monumental break with form, with the way armorers and prop people actually work with guns. When I did a Western in the 90s called The Cherokee Kid, we had live rounds. We would shoot guns for practice. We would shoot those old Western guns for practice. We had some of the best armorers in the business, and still we cleared firearms ourselves, even though the armorers were clearing them in advance and letting everybody know that, you know, when a firearm was on set. And everybody had a gun on that. Nobody got hurt because, you know, we followed form. We followed, you know, the proper procedure when you have a firearm on set, which they did on Paul's movie and couldn't seem to do on Alec's movie.
My understanding is that these accidents are very, very rare, which is one of the reasons that they make the news. And obviously, if it involves a movie star, that helps too. So this sounds not like procedures in general are lacking, but like people didn't follow the procedures that are there.
That's the major accidents you hear about, like Brandon Lee or John Eric Hexum. John Eric Hexum, of course, put a gun to his head with a blank in it, didn't realize that it actually explodes and there's explosive force that could fracture his skull. Did that to himself. Brandon Lee, there was a discharge of stuff within the gun. Ever since that, you know, every one of those issues, you know, created greater and greater, more strict safety regulations for the people working on the set. So it's nearly impossible to do what they did. It's nearly impossible.
Where did they film Rust, Mark?
I think in New Mexico.
Okay.
And my friend Jensen Ackles was in that. So he was literally supposed to be, I think, the person that Alec was going to shoot.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. Jonathan with 199. Thank you for that. Who's next? We got Seth, we got Paul, and we got me. Who's it going to be? I can jump in here. You know, so the Martin Luther King statue was unveiled a week ago, and people are making a lot of noise about it. Of course, conservatives are happy to say this is the degradation of society. Objectivists are happy to say the same, that this is nihilism, or this is like ugliness in art. I personally, I don't have a problem with the statue. So if you haven't, those who haven't seen it, it's like, it's inspired by a picture of Martin Luther King hugging his wife, but it's just like their arms basically like in isolation. It looks awkward from certain angles. It's also hard to understand by looking at it. But my kind of attitude is like, you know, artists don't always want to do the exact same thing that the last generation did. Like actual artists they're curious to try something new. So I've seen worse art than this. It's an interesting new approach, and I could see why the panel of judges decided to go with this sculpture. It's not like they're all nihilists who hate causality and existence. They're just like, oh yeah, this is interesting. It's new. Let's try this out. I really have no problem with this personally. I wouldn't mind seeing other new approaches to sculpture Not that they should be publicly funded, but that's a separate issue. So I'm curious what you guys think.
I'll jump in. I don't like it at all, because you don't know what it is, right? And if you don't really know what it is, then like what value is it serving? It's too like subjective. It's too, has all the problems I think of modern art in general, where it's like you're almost afraid to kind of go out and say what it is. Like Martin Luther King was a hero, and this doesn't. You don't get that he was a hero. Like if you want to do a show like an embrace, like there's another way to maybe convey that embrace, if that's what you're trying to convey as the artist, that I think is more, is better done, right? Like you don't even know that this is Martin Luther King. You don't even know that this is his wife. Like you could have just had, I mean, I could think of at least 10 other ways off the top of my head that I would have portrayed the same message that would have been clearer and would have done, I think, the man and the hero more justice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is either, and I think you should be able to identify the subject to some degree in the art, particularly when the idea is to promote that subject, right? It's to lionize him and hold him up, and I don't think that art does it. Sorry,
doesn't really do it. It's just that like. The other thing has been done so many times. So many statues of Martin Luther King have already been erected, if that's the word, or sculpted.
Well, I think
but then you're just one is being different to be different, as opposed to, you can find an original way, I think, of composing a piece of art that at least we know what the subject is.
Yeah, we've had multiple statues of MLK, multiple sculptures, but I don't think we've ever had a sculpture of Martin Luther King and of that hug, that embrace between MLK and his wife after he won the Nobel. But I kind of agree with the rest of the gang that that you really can't tell what it is, and from certain angles, it just looks phallic.
That's what I thought it was.
The first image that I saw, I was like, is that some lady holding a dick, or like that's so to me,
or
like, and compare that to Pieta, right? The Michelangelo sculpture of the mother cradling her son. There's no mistaking what that is, and it's beautiful and tragic. If you can't figure out what it is, if you have to be told by a plaque or by this is what this is, then I question the artistry and I question the emotion that it evokes, because I think art should be something that you don't need a narration for. It should be something that you can immediately react to and analyze. And sure, there's deeper aspects of it. I have an artist friend who, we would go to museums all the time, and he would explain to me about, well, it was really difficult to get red in this era and what they did to get blue. And that's all great, but I can still look at the painting and I can still understand it and appreciate it. But if I have to be told, well, this is actually a sculpture of MLK and his wife after, I kind of have an issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, also like I'm just looking at it now and like, bringing my own context into it. Like, it looks like, it could easily be someone getting rear naked choked, for example. There's just an arm going across and two hands, like you can't tell it's a hug. You can't tell, there's nothing conveyed there. The message is not clearly conveyed.
Way to bring it back to wrestling-ish, Seth.
The MMA approach to MLK. So I saw a picture of this on Facebook, I think yesterday. I didn't stay long enough to see that it was about Martin Luther King. I just thought that's odd. So I've now figured out what it is that you guys are talking about. I think that if possible, if we're giving tribute to a figure, the tribute should evoke our feelings for the figure and what it is that makes that figure stand out above other figures that we're choosing not to give tributes to. So if hugging anonymously is what MLK should be best known for, then I think that's perfect. But I don't think anonymous hugging was the point of MLK. And I'm not saying there should be a thought balloon above his head that says, I'm freed Black people or whatever stupid like that. But I sort of want to see the face. I'm so crazy. I actually want to see the face. I think that brains are important when it comes to values and to changing the world. even more than arms. And I'm in favor of more brains and fewer arms.
Yeah, so like I wasn't saying this is like the ultimate tribute to MLK and that this is what art should always be. Obviously, if you compare it
Rucka,
to
you were.
Michelangelo,
You were. You know,
I
you were.
was. Yeah, that's right. But no, I mean, this is, you know, look, I don't agree with there being a publicly funded monument, of course. And the more you have these stupid contests, you're going to have all types of kooky new displays. But I mean, to me, this is not like the ultimate degradation of what art can be. To me, it's just like someone had an idea. They said they liked this picture of him hugging his wife, and they said, let's just isolate the arms. Robert with $5 says the MLK statue looked substantially better from some angles than others. If you haven't seen it from any but the worst angles, look for more pics. Yeah, I mean, and also, and like, yeah, there should also be like art, you know, there should be representational art that gets to the point of what is to be conveyed. But you're also going to have people coming up with these sort of, you know, sort of strange new ideas. And I don't see this as like an assault on beauty or anything like the types of language you'll hear from conservatives and objectivists.
Certainly an assault on the conceptual nature of art, as far as I'm concerned, and what a piece like that should represent.
I don't agree with that. That's what I'm challenging today.
Yeah, I mean, I would even just say like, okay, let's just say, I just don't think it's it's just not effective if you're going to sort of judge it by, is this conveying the message that the artist wants to convey, like what Rand calls art, right? The selective recreation of reality, right? Like, what are you okay, so recreate something, and you could do that definitely in creative ways. But the question is that clear, right? Or is that coming across from your piece of art? And if it's not coming across in that piece of art, I think that's like, I think that's a problem. Like, take like Monet, right? For example, right? The water lilies, kind of the abstract kind of pictures of it, like, I think many people would take issue with his style, I guess, right? It's clear. It's not clear. It's a little blurry, right? But I think he pulls it off enough where like you still can convey, you still get the message that Monet is trying to show the beauty of a landscape, right? And that still comes through. I mean, when I go look at Monet's painting, like I live in New York, so I go to the Met Museum here, and they have a few of his paintings, and like I still like it, even though I'm not a big fan of that genre of art. Like, it's pretty to me, and I think you still get that. I don't think it's deep, but I still get the beauty in his style that was done. I think, at least at the time, let's say, it was pretty creative, and maybe still is. So at least that beauty image comes through. Like, to me, like, I don't know, going back to the MLK, like if you're trying to show him as compassionate or strong or masculine in the way like he loves his wife, or his wife's emotion with him, like none of that comes through. It just it's an awkward, like, I don't know what the message there. It's just kind of awkward.
I don't think that an explicit message about MLK is the point of art. Like, and again, putting aside that this is a public monument, so it's supposed to be about MLK. To me, it's just like the fact that an artist wanted to do this. I don't like have a problem with this. I don't see what's so outrageous about it. It's strange, but with a lot of art, by the way, you have no idea what the artist is saying. You go to the most prominent museums in the world, and there's naked people doing weird things, and you read it, and it's like they were trying to say that the French Revolution was blah, blah. It's like, I don't judge art by that, but also,
you can still look at it. You can still look at it and identify that they're naked people, that they're in an embrace, that they're, you can look at Mark right now getting licked by his dog, and somebody could sculpt that, and then you'd be able to understand at a later time, oh, that's an actor whose dog is licking him. But you should be able, it's just like a movie, right? You should not have to walk out of a movie going, what the hell was that about? Right? You should, everything should be there for you in the piece of art itself, whether it's literature, whether it's sculpture, whether it's film or TV, whether it's painting. You should be able to, no, I don't necessarily mean you don't understand the whole meaning of it, because people take different things away, but you should at least be able to identify what the objects are and what they're doing. And that's the part that I think it's well done. It's beautifully sculpted. The hands, somebody was mentioning here in the chat that hands are like one of the most difficult things to sculpt. I think it was very well done. What the hell? The clocks, the painter who did the yeah.
Oh, Dolly, yeah.
Yeah, Dolly, brilliant at what he did. But the meaning of it is, just fairly meaningless and in that case, more nihilistic, I would say. But you should at least be able to walk away and know what it is. Like, I don't know. I would have, if I saw that sculpture anywhere, I would not have any idea that there was anything involved about MLK. And that's an issue. You should be able to walk up to it and the David, right? No, you can't mistake the David or Rodin or, those, just comparing those two, it's not comparable to me.
Yeah, maybe even going back to
you can see
David,
the hands.
No, but even going back to David, if you saw that sculpture, right? Look at the sculpture, right? I wouldn't know it's David from David and Goliath, right? There weren't photographs. No one knows exactly what David looked like, but you can still, I'll speak for me, I still take away the emotion of what that is supposed to be. It is, a heroic picture, right? It is a heroic picture or a heroic sculpture. What is heroic about it? The stance of the human. He's clearly, has a weapon in his hand, right? And the whole demeanor, and the face and how it actually looks, right? The visual, the physical visual cues that you can take away from it, convey an emotion that the artist was trying to convey. And I don't know what the artist is trying to convey here. I just don't think it's well executed.
I think what you're all describing is the best kind of art, and certainly an art that I want to exist. But I'm saying there's other types of stuff that artists want to try sometimes. I can imagine Picasso is not everybody's cup of tea, yet he's celebrated by everybody, including objectivists. So, why did art start getting blurrier over the centuries? Why would any art aficionado not be outraged at that? Because there's different stuff that different artists want to try. And, that's it. I don't like comparing this one sculpture to other art. It's those other art pieces are timeless for a reason. And this MLK hand is probably not going to be remembered, but I see value, or I'm not upset at the fact that somebody had this idea and executed it.
I think you could appreciate it for different reasons too. But you can also critique it for how good is it, just like you could eat a hamburger and say this is good, this is a great hamburger, and this is a mediocre hamburger. I think we do the same with art too. That doesn't mean you shouldn't it doesn't mean you should stop experimentation, but it does mean that you can judge the outcome based upon the goal that you had going into it, just like anything else.
All right. We are low on time and got two of you left. So who's it going to be first, Paul or Seth?
Yeah, I think mine dovetails right into this. It was on art, and the question first, I wanted to kind of clarify some of the comments that I think we made on our show last week, Rucka, was, I do think, I said on that show, I don't think we should judge art, and actually want to walk that back. I do think you can judge art qua art, right? How effective it is for the purpose of art of conveying a message, which I kind of just said now. But what I meant by that really is I don't think you should morally judge art. And I think maybe this may come back to what you were saying, Rucka, or maybe it's a question, can you morally judge art in a sense? I almost feel what am I in the mood for? Think of art like food. Sometimes I just want a unhealthy milkshake, and sometimes I want the grass-fed, no antibiotic, super supremely healthy food, right? And I think the same goes for art too, where sometimes I want high art, and sometimes I just want a trashy sitcom or something, just because that fits my mood. So I do think you can so I don't necessarily think you need to morally judge art, but this is my question for the collective here. Can you glean an insight in someone's personality by the pattern of art that they consume over a period of time. So take someone who only watches, say, trashy sitcoms, or someone who only prefers modern art over, say, you know, some of the classical art. Do you think you can get an insight into someone's personality based on the art they like?
I
think
do,
it's
for sure.
Yes.
Go on.
That's just my answer.
difference-
I guess I'll
All right,
elaborate.
Paul, you're up. Yes.
I think you can understand a person's personality from the food that they eat on a regular basis, the music that they listen to, you know, how they keep their house, you know, what a person does. We're not talking about a one-off thing here, right? We're talking about
Right.
over a period of time and a pattern. You know, if a guy that I want to date only eats In-N-Out burger all, you know, like every day, I'm going to have an issue with that. If they're a sedentary person and they're not really active, I'm going to have an issue with that. If their favorite TV show in the world is Squid Games, I'm going to have an issue with that. You know, and yes, I agree. There are sometimes I'm just in the mood for a shoot 'em up. Like, I will watch John Wick, even though I've seen it multiple times, but I just want to like chill and watch somebody do some cool martial arts and shoot people. But that doesn't, you know, that doesn't mean that I'm like an empty, vacant person. It just means that's what I'm in the mood for. But I, like, to your point, Seth, if somebody's demonstrating a consistent pattern of worshiping nihilism or worshiping altruism, you can judge that, and you can see that over a period of time, or of just, you know, not taking care of their own body. You can judge that. And I think that you know, people should be morally judged for their overall consistent taste in art. That's my opinion.
I have a mixed reaction. I was a huge fan of Night of the Living Dead, which all of you know very well. It's a 1968 film. It's the best zombie film ever made. It is nihilistic, but I think it earns its nihilism, and I think it works as a nihilistic film. So those of us who were fans were waiting for years for the sequel to come out. And I think it was in 1979 that George Romero did Dawn of the Dead, which was in color, which had a real budget, unlike the first film, and which consisted, in my mind, of loving shots of heads exploding. It was the first time I'd seen on film people picking up rifles and shooting zombies in the head, and you'd have glorious splatter special effects courtesy of Tom Savini or whoever it was. So I'm there in the audience, and I actually empathize with characters in a film. It's one of my many, many, many flaws. And the audience around me, which consists of kids younger than I am, is screaming in joy and pleasure at each kill shot. And I'm thinking, who the fuck are these people? Are they human? Am I of the same species as these people who are getting off on these slow motion nihilistic headshots? Again, this is not 2023. This is 1979. This is something I hadn't seen before. So I have mixed feelings about this. Part of me thinks they're monsters and they need to die. And part of me thinks people are going to movies for different reasons. I don't think video games had been invented, or if they had, they were in their infancy at this point. But these guys were basically seeing this as a video game. So for them, it wasn't a moral contest of how should I properly react when I see the head of an innocent or of a zombie being blown up. It was, oh, it's really fun. It's really cool the way they did that. So part of me agrees, as a crafts person, it's incredible that you can pull off that illusion. You're a magician who's making an illusion, and you're making people respond emotionally to the illusion. It nauseates me and makes me not want to be part of the same species as those people, but perhaps I'm the one who's overreacting there. I would agree in general with what you guys have said, that if there's a pattern and that's all people want, I certainly don't want to have anything to do with them. I may not be qualified to say that they're bad people, but I'm certainly qualified to say that they're not my kind of person. But I'm shocked. I'm always shocked by differences in taste. I mean, the idea that you guys don't begin each show with a Beatles song makes no sense to me. I don't know where your taste is. I used to watch the Academy Awards, and it would really matter to me that they got it right. And then when they, for 70 years, didn't get it right, I thought perhaps it should matter a little less what I think of other people's tastes. I can't affect it. I should just love the stuff that I love. I wish people embrace the stuff that I loved. I wish people would read Atlas and not go, well, there's a fascist. Because I'm going, I'm sorry, which word was difficult for you in Atlas Shrugged where you got to that conclusion? But I don't live in that world. So when I find out that my screenwriting students were exposed at the age of 8 years old to Texas Chainsaw Massacre by their parents, I think, wow, that's some bad parenting, but I can't go a lot further than that. So I'm mixed. I would like more people who are properly horrified at the stuff they should be horrified by, like disco, and people who appreciate Simon and Garfunkel the way Simon and Garfunkel should be appreciated.
Okay. Again, I'll be the voice of skepticism and reluctance to judge. Of course, you can learn about somebody by what they're really into and what they consume regularly. But obviously, you want to factor in with everything else you know about them. Jax, if you meet the man of your dreams and his favorite show is Squid Games, it'll become your favorite show like that. I think so. Everything else about him is great. Not the man
of my dreams.
Everything else about him is exactly perfect, but he really likes this show for some reason. I mean, anyway, yeah. And also,
that wouldn't be possible. That wouldn't be possible if everything else about that person is perfect, and then their favorite show. It'd be like, everything else about them is perfect, but they thought that Atlas Shrugged was fascism. Like everything else is perfect. It wouldn't happen.
Thinking it's fascism is not the same as liking or disliking something. So many people love Squid Game, which I haven't even seen, but someone liking or disliking something is not the same as them thinking it's fascism. So a lot of people, you can meet a guy who dislikes Atlas Shrugged. He's not moved by it, but in other ways, you really like him and he's wonderful. So anyway, you factor in everything about somebody and you factor in the purpose for which you're judging them and proceed with caution, I say.
We'll have a longer conversation about who our dream people are, Rucka.
All right. Looking forward to that. We are basically out of time, but we still got Paul and a couple of super chats. All right, real quick, with the super chat, Free Trade says, are real functional firearms actually allowed on movie sets? I always thought only specially modified guns were used for obvious reasons.
Some of them are modified. Some of them do have the capacity to shoot actual bullets. So
I'm sorry.
Now,
who's this?
Now it's airsoft. Now, what's the matter? What's the matter?
Who's this cool guy with the 90s backwards cap that replaced Mark on the show?
Put the backwards cap on because it was blocking all the light, so you could see my my grizzled face. Now they use the airsoft guns, so there's really no issue about live rounds.
Robert,
but lightsabers do work.
There we go.
Ooh, yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah.
I've heard this, and now that you're saying it, Paul, I believe it.
Thank you.
Robert with $2 says hugging is the most important character trait, and Jonathan with $1.99. Thank you for that. Allie with $2 says, "Oh, it's Johnny," and I would support the sculpture. Jonathan with 99 cents. Oh Jesus, they're just throwing money at us. Jonathan with 99 cents again. And Robert with $5 says, coming up, an awful or awesome Life on Earth. Okay, we'll plug your show in a minute. But actually, since we got nothing coming up at the bottom of the hour, we can go a couple minutes over if that's agreeable to you all, because I'd like to hear Paul's topic of the day. So go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so I
better be good. We've waited all day for it.
Yeah, I don't need pressure from you, Pellegrino. So you guys have like real topics. Jax comes in with a real topic, and it's like this is something we can talk about for 20 minutes because she's smart and she's prepared
and old.
So there you go.
Not gonna let that one go.
Thank you so much. I wrote a bunch of lighter ones, and the one that I was going to lead with is you've got one wish. You cannot wish for more wishes. What is your wish? And since we are almost out of time, I thought I would lead with mine. So it occurs to me that in the free will debates and the existence of God, when people say, when people talk about the problem of evil and they say, how can there be a God and evil in the world? And the people who believe in God will say some variation of, well, there would be no free will if there's not the possibility of evil. And I call bullshit. So for my one wish, I would wish for a world, if I can only make one change and I can't have additional wishes, I would wish for humanity that is identical to current humanity, except that my stomach is tighter. But the other thing is that you cannot initiate force or fraud against other people. You can do anything else. You can be mean to them. You can think about it. You can want to do it. But the laws of physics will prevent your actually carrying it out. Now, does that hurt your freedom? No. My free will is not injured by my inability to fly or to lift 2,000 pounds or to look good in Superman's tights. I want those things. The fact that I cannot achieve them in no way mitigates against the fact that I have free will. So I would love it if you and I could think all the evil thoughts we are currently thinking. but not actually be able to carry out the ones that would initiate force or fraud against other people. I would do that in a second. I don't care if it's fascist or anything else. That's me.
Utopia.
Ball game for president. Ball game for president.
Yeah.
I would
So-
wish,
Oh, go ahead.
I would wish to write that movie, Paul. Because I would find a way of how I don't think that could work. But
Okay.
it would be very interesting to write that.
C.S. Lewis was also of the ilk. He wrote about this. He wrote about all the bad things that happen to good people. And he basically said it's impossible for God to design the universe in such a way that the laws of physics would have to be suspended for that to work out. I love C.S. Lewis. His Chronicles of Narnia are better than anything I will write in my life. And he's completely wrong. Plus, he's dead.
Yeah, pretty much everything he wrote on philosophy is wrong.
But he's a great writer.
He is a great writer.
Yeah.
He captivated me for a while when I was a Christian, that's for sure.
Are we going through what we all are wishing for in this, or is that
Yeah,
what
Yeah,
that
got
was?
you have
You're
one wish and
interested,
you
yeah.
can't ask for more wishes.
Right.
I guess I wouldn't mind being a few inches taller if I had to pick something.
Maybe a baller.
Yeah.
Wish I was a little bit taller. Wish I was a baller. Wish I had a girl. If I did, I would call her. There it is.
Yeah.
I wish that my dogs would live to be 100.
But youthful. You don't want them just to, you know,
Right. Right.
full of vim and vigor.
Yes.
Kind of wish I had a backwards hat that I could put on to fit in.
Wow, that's your wish.
Well, that
Life
maybe.
is good for Seth.
All right. I mean, I guess it's got to be a little bit better than Paul's utopia. I would go with I guess immortality. Right? It's the ultimate good.
Would it be? I mean, I'm
Yes.
not in favor of death. So
I
let me
would
come
say
out with
defined by
that.
the objectivist ethics, probably.
Okay. And I assume eternal youth, or at least you can plug your youth at a certain age.
That's
so
a
that you're
good
not
question.
Gonna...
That's where I get screwed. I guess
You
I'm
should,
like 2,000 years old and like
But you're 26.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to
Have
want to
you
be
guys
between 15
seen,
and 26.
Have you guys seen Sandman? Neil Gaiman's Sandman on.
I read the graphic series.
Seth, if you want to know what that looks like, watch Sandman, because
Okay.
they give this guy immortality, and they decide every 100 years they're going to meet up in the same place to see what his life is like.
no. Interesting.
And it goes over a period of I think like 1,000 years, maybe 500 or 1,000 years. But you should, and they stop his, so he's fully grown. He doesn't get older or younger. Kind of like they made him a vampire without making him a vampire.
Is it
but,
like benevolent or is it malevolent?
Actually, I think my takeaway from it was more benevolent, but there were periods of time where, he wished for it to be undone. And then, you become the wisest person in the world if you really use it in that manner. So it's a great TV show to watch as well. They did a really good job with it.
Steph, would you choose immortality if other people were not immortal, i.e. if people that you loved were going to die?
Ooh, that's a good question too. Maybe this is a bad, maybe I should go with my second pick, which was the December 2017 Sports Almanac from Back to the Future.
Naturally. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, good collective episode, everybody. Coming up at 10 p.m. UK time, it's Life on Earth with Robert Naser on Wonder and Awe, Awful or Awesome. And that's it for today. Thank you all. What a lovely panel it's been. We touched upon quite a number of issues and went overtime. For forgiveness, we ask to the overlords. See you all back here tomorrow for the Daily Objective, and goodbye.
Peace.